Welcome to section 3.4, writing the equation of a line. Now, we're going to go through these, and all of these examples, I'm starting with this first one. Notice it's employing slope-intercept form, so it's writing the equation of a line. So section 3.3, where you learned about the forms of lines, slope, intercept, and standard, and how to find slope, and how to put all that together, this is putting it all together. So make sure you have done 3.3. I'd recommend even doing the homework, get a solid basis, so this will make more sense. So let's go through this first example, and we'll go through all the examples to help you see how this works. So notice I have a slope and I have a point, and I want this slope-intercept form. Well, slope-intercept form, as a reminder, is y equals mx plus b. Now, what can I substitute in? What do I already know? Anytime you're faced with a problem, you should ask yourself, what am I given, or what do I know? Notice I'm given an m, a slope. I can substitute that in. If I substitute that in, this is a little bit closer to my normal form. If I had b, if I knew what the intercept is, I'd be good. But I don't know what the y-intercept is, so I can't substitute in for b. Excuse me. But I do have a point. And in the point, 2 is what value? Is it x or is it y? Hopefully you're saying x. Since it's x, can I substitute it in for the x? Can I substitute this in for y? And the answer is yes. And if you do that, notice you have this equation. And this equation has only one thing that you do not know, b, which means you can solve for it a lot easier. So I want you to pause the video, and I want you to go ahead and solve for b. All right, so hopefully you finished solving. You notice that 1/2 times 2 is just going to make that 1, so this whole thing is -1. So we have -1, which when we move that over, we get b equals -2. Now, don't just stop, because we need our line in slope-intercept form. And notice right here we have almost everything except the b. So if we plug the b back into that equation, it's going to look like y equals -1/2 x minus 2. And just like that, we found the equation in slope-intercept form. So as a reiteration, we started off with a slope-intercept form, and that's probably going to be the best form to start with in everything you're going to do in this class. Then we took this thing, which was the slope, and plugged it in and went from there based on what information I currently had. So you can always use that to your advantage. In fact, I recommend doing that. So let's do another one. Notice this is very similar, except one little twist. Standard form. Don't let that throw you off. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to solve this thing into slope-intercept form like we just did for the last problem. So I want you to pause the video, go through the same process, and put this equation in slope-intercept form, and then we'll talk about standard form. All right, so hopefully you're coming back now that you've actually done it. The first thing, y equals mx plus b, we can substitute in for m, is 5. And then we substitute the point in, and we get 1 equals 5 times -4 plus b. Multiply all that out, solving for b, and you end up with b is equal to 21. All right, so hopefully all of that, you did well. If you made any mistake, kind of stop yourself, go back, double check it. And then if you substitute that in, notice we get y equals 5x plus 21. Again, do not stop because it asks in standard form. It's critical you know what form you want your final answer to be in. Well, what is standard form? Hopefully you're saying it's the form where it's ax plus by equals c. So x and y are on the same side, and all of my numbers are integers, meaning no fractions, no decimals. So how could you move this over and to get x on the other side? Well, what if we subtract 5x? Well, I get -5x plus y equals 21. And notice -5, there's really a 1 right here, and a 21 are all integers, so we can go ahead and stop at that form. That is our standard form. Let's move on to our next example. Look at this one first off and ask yourself, what am I given? And what's different? Hopefully you're saying you have 2 points, we don't have a slope. But wait a second, let's think back to the last section, 3.3. If you have 2 points, can you find the slope through those 2 points? Okay, I want you to go ahead and find the slope that goes between those 2 points, 3, 2, and 6, 1. Pause the video while you work through that. Hopefully you've gotten through that. So as a reminder, slope is m equals y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So the y's over x's. If we substitute those numbers in, 2 minus 1 over 3 minus 6. You may have had the opposite, by the way, and had 1 minus 2 over 6 minus 3. It's okay. You'll get the same final answer. If you keep going with this, you get 1 over negative 3, and that negative we can just pull out in front. That gives us the negative 1/3. Well, notice we have slope now, and we have a point. So now this turns back into the previous problem. So I want you to pause the video again, use this first point, 3, 2. If you want, you can use 6, 1. It doesn't really matter. But I'm going to go ahead and I will use 3, 2 in my example. But you can pick either of these points, so pick one of them, and use the slope and write it in slope-intercept form. So pause the video and go ahead and do that. All right, so welcome back. So hopefully y equals mx plus b is where you started. We have a slope. Let's substitute that in. I'm going to take the point 3, 2. Again, you could use 6, 1. Either of the points is perfectly fine, and both will lead to the same b value. But I just picked 3, 2 because it's the first one. If I then do my multiplication, notice I get this and I move over and I get 3 is my b value. So I can substitute that back in, and my final answer is y equals 1/3 x plus 3. And you can check this by putting in either of these points, put in both of them in fact, and they should both work in this situation if you do this correctly. All right, so let's move on. Let's do another example, very similar. Again, the twist is I want you to do in standard form. So I want you to pause this and think about what did we do in the last video? Well, we found the slope, and after you found the slope, you used one of the 2 points to go ahead and solve it. So go ahead and work through this, find the necessary parts that you have to figure out what is this problem, at least in slope-intercept form. If you go other standard form, you go ahead, but pause it, find the slope, and then find the slope-intercept form. Welcome back. Hopefully you went ahead and were able to go through that. So first, slope. We have the formula for slope. Plug in our values. And notice 5 minus 1 is 4, but 3 minus negative 1 is really the same thing as 3 plus 1, which gives me 4 over 4, or just 1. That's a nice slope. Again, if we start with y equals mx plus b, we can substitute in that one value. Now, again, you can pick either of the 2 points. You can pick the negative 1, 1 or the 3, 5. I went with a 3, 5. It does not matter. If you do that, 5 equals this, which knows that means, so b is equal to 2. Great. We solve for b. We substitute back in. Y equals x plus 2. But we're not done. Because we need to put this in standard form. Now, I forgot this when I made my slide. So I'm just going to tell you, if I take this and move this over the other side, I'll get negative x plus y equals 2. So that is your standard form that you can get for this equation. All right, number 5. So again, I want you to write the equation of a line that passes through a point with no slope, and it's in standard form. Wait a second. This one's confusing because all the other ones have a point and a slope, or 2 points. This one does not have 2 points and it has a point, but what's the other piece of information? And no slope. So think back to the last section, 3.3. What kind of lines had no slope? Not zero slope, but no slope. The slope does not exist. And hopefully you're saying no slope means it's a vertical line. What do vertical lines look like? They're lines that go straight up and down. And the reason they don't move is because they all have the exact same x value. So what is the x value that I have given here? Well, x is 9, which actually means that because it's a vertical line, my equation, which is x equals some number b, I just take my x value and plug it in. Boom, done. So x equals 9. That is the answer to your problem. That's it. So if it says 0 slope, it's going to be a horizontal. No slope, it's going to be vertical. All right, let's move on, because I want to do another kind of example, and notice this one is a little different because I get a point, but it tells me I want it to be parallel. Well, what does parallel mean? Hopefully you're saying parallel means they don't cross, but what's it mean in terms of slope? Same slope. So since it has the same slope, if I look at my equation, y equals 5x, the slope of that is 5, so I get to go ahead and bring that down. After I have the slope from this equation right here, ignore that equation. Do not use this equation anymore. Now we're going to go back to the drawing board and do y equals mx plus b and use my point and use my slope and build it together. So using this point and this slope, I want you to finish finding the slope-intercept form. Go ahead and pause it and work through that. Welcome back. Hopefully you noticed that y equals 5x plus b. Plugged in your point. There's the 2. There's the 9. Multiply it out. 10. Move it over. You get b equals -1. So your final form is y equals 5x minus 1. And we're okay because we want slope-intercept form. Okay. So notice the key thing is anytime you see another equation of a line. So if I'm asking for one equation, and I say another equation, I'm going to ask you either parallel or perpendicular. Parallel means same slope. Perpendicular means the negative reciprocal. And that is actually our next one. So here again, I give you an equation of line and I say I want it perpendicular. So first off, perpendicular means negative reciprocal. It means I'm going to take it, I'm going to flip it, and I'm going to change the sign. So if it's negative, it goes positive, positive, negative. But in this current form, notice this line is in standard form, not slope-intercept form. So it's hard to know what exactly it is. But if I took that line, can you rewrite this line in slope-intercept form? So I want you to go ahead and pause the video, rewrite that line in slope-intercept form. All right, so hopefully you realize first you can move the x to the other side. So you get -5, y equals -3x. If not, pause, otherwise keep going. We divide everything by -5. Well, as a reminder, that means I divide the -3 by -5, which a negative over negative is a positive. And this is a positive 9 divided by a negative, so that's going to be negative, and it's just 9/5. Now, the nice part is don't worry about the fact that this is a nasty fraction, because again, the only thing we want out of this equation is the slope. But my slope is the negative reciprocal of this slope. So what is the negative reciprocal of this slope? Or in other words, what's the slope of my line? Hopefully you're saying it's -5/3. Now we have slope, we have a point, -310. Can you put both of those together to write the equation of this line in slope-intercept form? Go ahead and pause the video and work through it. Okay, welcome back. So again, we start with y equals mx plus b. We sub in our slope. We sub in our point. And then we just do sort of multiplication. And notice a negative and a negative make a positive. And the 3's are going to cancel out because it's 3 over 1. Move stuff over. You got -15. Just tack that on to what you had before, and boom, you're done. So like that, we've worked through all these problems. So the different scenarios, again, that we could have faced. If I have slope and a point. If I have 2 points, if I have a point and something about no slope, and the last scenario is if I have the equation of a line and a point. And the equation of a line, make sure you use the equation that you're given only for the slope, not for anything else. All right, if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, good luck with your homework and go on to the next section.